Interesting. Interesting. All right. Well, we have our last topic. Appreciate that from the Minnesota side, guys, and everything. Whoops. There it is. Returning production rankings. So if you didn't see, I tweeted out the returning production rankings for the Big Ten earlier this week. I should have had that pulled up before I started talking about it here, but I know Nebraska was first with 77%. Let me find them here. I apologize. Yes, Nebraska was first with 77%, Northwestern second with 76%, Rutgers third, 74, Minnesota and Wisconsin were tied with 71%, Penn State with 70% in sixth, Oregon and Iowa tied with 69%, Illinois was ninth with 62%, Ohio State, Michigan State tied at 10th with 61%, Indiana 56%, UCLA and Purdue both 51%, USC 50%, Maryland at 16th with 45%, and then rounding out the end, tied in last was Michigan and Washington, both returning 36% of their returning production. So definitely an interesting situation here with the Big Ten and who's coming back. Zach, we'll kick this to you first. What stands out in these rankings and percentages to you the most?
The national champion and the national runner-up have not a little over a third of their production, both returning. And that, like, they're going to be shells of themselves next year, which is just insane because they were both great this year. And so that's the first thing that stands out to me. The second is as much as being made for Ohio State bringing everybody back. If you told me that they were tied with Michigan State for returning production, I would not have believed you. Because I think the word on Michigan State right now is, oh, Jonathan Smith, like he's going to be a good coach for them, but like they did not have a good year and they're going to lose a lot of people. But that number, and I know that number, it's one statistic, it's one metric, but it is surprising that Ohio State, Michigan State are tied. And it just gives me a little pause, particularly as we probably elevate Ohio State and are sobered a bit with Michigan State. It gives me pause a little bit for both of those programs on how we're perceiving them.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely interesting. And, Michigan State and Ohio State could not be much different because Michigan State, their offense returning production is less than 50%. And then their defense is 74%. So one less than 75. When in Ohio State, their offensive production and their defensive production are both at 61%, which, with all the guys they brought back on defense, I wouldn't have said that, but you think they're losing two linebackers and they've lost a safety. Obviously they brought in another safety in that area, but it is interesting to think about there. So yeah, that's a great point. Kurt, what stood out to you the most?
One, just how Northwestern's got, coming off a year where they outperformed a lot of people's expectations and returning so much of that production, and looking like they got the right guy at the head coaching spot. So it's kind of excited to see what they do. I'm not gonna lie, Minnesota surprised me a little bit just because, losing Newman, I guess I didn't know exactly how it all factored in. It's probably just, how many starters you lost essentially and how many snaps they played
too.
Yeah. Okay. So, but having our defense be as high of a percentage as it was returning, that was, a little bit comforting as a Gopher fan to see, I guess. Just they had their struggles, but getting that many guys back made me feel good. And then I would also just point out, Purdue kind of surprised me with how low they were, just in the fact that, it was the first year. I'm blanking on their coach's name now.
Ryan Walters.
Thank you, Ryan Walters. I thought he did okay for his first full year there. I mean, I don't know what they were really expecting after losing Braum and, having a lot of guys I felt like they already had a lot of roster turnover, so I wasn't expecting them to be down as much. But then I thought about it, I'm like, oh yeah, it seemed like every other day there was somebody leaving in the portal for them getting lured away, it felt like. So kind of curious to see what that means for for Purdue going forward, and just if it's going to be a difficult road for them to maintain players going forward.
Yeah, I know it's interesting. I know Purdue brought in some, like Georgia players and stuff like that, and so that's obviously going to be a feather in their cap. But yeah, losing that many players, if nothing else, culture and things like that. Ryan Walters is trying to build that. It's definitely something that impacts that. Max, your thoughts on the rankings overall?
Yeah, kind of echoing what Zach said. It's interesting to see a Washington and Michigan coming in so low, especially after both teams being in the national championship. My first thought is we just saw what happened with TCU this year coming off of their national championship run. They lose, all their star power. They at least get to keep their coach, and we still saw what the season, they had this year. Washington basically lost everything, and they are coming to the Big Ten, so that's going to be a pretty tough road to try to climb. But it'll be interesting to see if they can, continue their success or not. And even Michigan's kind of in the same boat. New coaching staff, a lot of turnover on the roster. Can they bounce back from all that success? It'll be tough. But the other thing is the new standout. This might just be my perception from past off seasons, but it always seems like Nebraska wins the off season every year in the Big Ten, and seeing them ranked so high makes me worried that they're kind of set up to fail. Now, I think I like Matt Rule a lot, and I think that the year that they had last season, being his first year at head coach, was a successful one. I'm worried for the Sully Scoop podcast that this is gonna, I'm sure they're already predicting to go undefeated and win the Big Ten, but hopefully seeing these numbers is not going to pump the tires too much, but
you can't stop that fan base. Sorry. They already have the trophy. They've already hung the banner. They already given the quarterback, I forget his name. They've already given him the Heisman for the next 3 years. It's a done deal in their minds, but I respect that. Just as long as they keep losing to PJ, it's okay with me.
Yeah, no, I was getting ready to ask that before you said that there at the end, Max. I was like, really? Is nobody going to talk about 77% Nebraska off-season champs every year? It was funny. The last live stream we did, I had the Solar Scoop Pod and Justin Adams, who was also a Nebraska fan, on, and we were talking about Oregon, and I learned how much Nebraska fans don't believe in Oregon in that last episode. And Oregon's returning a good amount. 69% is pretty good, but it's nowhere near the 77% of Nebraska. I'll ask this question to you, Zach, and then we'll kind of end here and open it up for any final thoughts if anybody has anything. But Nebraska 77%. Zach, are you going to be a believer in the Cornhuskers?
I'm a believer in the sense that I think they make a bowl, and I've said, I think I said it on the the Ohio podcast. I think Nebraska beats USC. That's like my upset of the year in the Big Ten next year. But I think if people think that Dylan Raiola is going to come in to the new look Big Ten and win 11 or 12 games and win the Big Ten, like that's just a big ask with everybody else coming in. But I do think the foundation for Nebraska is so much healthier than it was under Mike Riley and especially under Scott Frost now that they have Matt Rule. So I didn't mention Northwestern or Nebraska, but those two did stand out. And I don't know. I think 8 wins is I'm not a betting man, but if the over under was 8, I'd be tempted to go over. So the one other thing, and I'd be curious to get your thoughts. I think Rutgers is a hard schedule, but seeing that they return 74% of their production, like I wonder how much of a sleeper pick they might be. Not obviously not to win the Big Ten, but I thought what they did this year was incredible for the schedule they had. 6-6 with, you had Virginia Tech in the non-conference, who ended up being a bowl team. You had the East, which was a bear. You had Northwestern, who ended up being much better than anyone expected. And they went 6-6 with that schedule. that returning production, I don't know. Do they maybe get to 7 wins in the regular season? I think it's going to be tough because of their schedule, but that stood out to me too.
Yeah, no, I think the top 3 there was very interesting to me. You know, you have Nebraska, Northwestern, and Rutgers, who all kind of had different years, and they were all kind of near the same record, but it seemed like you could write a different story for every one of those years, and to be returning what they had, you almost wonder, whose story continues on from last year and continues to be written and go in a different way. So thanks for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.